auspices of the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities grant effort, which is a grant through the Chautauqua County Health Network that is designed to help schools and communities and work sites become healthier places for people in general, whether it's physical activity, access to healthy foods, creating more walkability, creating policy level changes that encourage people in organizations, for example, to do more to stay healthy. And we've been working with the Resource Center, doing some work with the Wellness Committee, talking about a number of different things. So one thing they thought might be helpful was to do a stress management, a series of stress management courses. This is the first of 3. There's this week, next week, and the week after, over lunchtime, 10 after to 10 of. And we are videotaping these classes. They will be on your website, and they will also be on the Creating Healthy Schools and Communities website for anyone to access who wants to learn more about stress management. So none of you are stressed, right? No stress at all. Never had any in your life. Okay. Interestingly enough, stress is something that we are all aware of, that we all experience, we're all aware of, but we don't always think about what causes it. We don't always go into depth about what maybe the cause is. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not so obvious. What's more important is, what do we do about it? Now, the thing about stress, by the way, the thing about stress is it's deadly. Stress kills. It's so hard on your body because what happens is stress that we experience now still has many of the physiological aspects of when we were, thousands of years ago when we had a large animal chasing us. That same response, fight or flight, is what happens to us now when we are in stressful situations. We have not changed enough to change that physiological reaction. Part of that is a whole lot of hormones are excreted when we're in stress. Hormones which cause us to run faster or fight harder, or in some cases, in modern day, it can be almost like it can increase our thought processes. So some stress once in a while can be a little bit of a good thing. A little bit of stress in certain situations can actually help our performance. A lot of stress over long term can kill us because our body is not made to function with these high levels of hormones, and it starts deteriorating our bodies. And stress has been linked, like living with stress has been linked to things such as an increase in heart disease, an increase in cancer rates, hypertension, a lot of those kinds of things. It contributes to physical ailments because, like I say, our body is not designed to deal with all of it. So that's why it's important to start thinking about what are my stressors, what causes me to be stressed, and secondly, what can I do about that? So to start our little foray into stress and what it looks like, we're going to do a quick overview of what is stress and what are some basic strategies for dealing with stress. So stress, first and foremost, stress is a condition or feeling experienced when a person perceives that demands exceed the personal and social resources the individual is able to mobilize. Now, what does that mean? It means when we feel there is a situation that is asking something of us that is more than we can live up to. That we do not have either, we must feel threatened by the situation in some way, or we must doubt that we can meet the threat. So it's both we feel challenged by some sort of demand, some sort of expectation that we can't completely deal with, and that we do not have the resources to meet it, and we feel threatened by it. Now, does this mean like there's a tiger waiting outside that's going to jump on us and that's the kind of thing? Well, yes, that would cause us stress, wouldn't it? If every night you went out and there was a large cat that wanted to eat you, sitting on the car next to you, that would cause some stress, right? Yet, what we're really talking about here in the workplace is when somebody puts work demands on you. You need to get a project done. You need to get some work done. You need to get whatever. And how can that feel threatening? How could a work demand end up making you feel threatened? I mean, what gets threatening about work sometimes?
Losing your job.
Yeah. The deadlines, and because what do we do as humans? It might be a deadline and we're concerned about it, but where does our mind go? Oh, it's a deadline. I may not make it. Yeah, you start like catastrophizing. And if I don't get this deadline in, and this is, this is happening again, and I didn't get the last one, and they're going to fire me, and I won't have a job, and we can just go to all sorts of our brain can take us to all sorts of places. So we do feel threatened, right, in some way, shape, or form. And we don't believe that we are going to be able to meet whatever that has now become. And that's what is the root of stress. What's interesting about stress, though, is stress is not always a negative. Positive events can also cause stress sometimes. I mean, new things. For example, a new home, a new baby, a new job, a new, things like that can also cause us to feel like we're not so, just to use the example of a new baby, for example. A brand new mother or father may feel, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I have the resources. I don't know if I can, and it's not a threat per se, but could people feel threatened, like I won't raise a good kid, yeah, we can go to that. So it can be potentially a stressing situation. So to get us a little more grounded, I'm going to hand out an interesting test. It's called Stress-Related Incidents Test, okay? And this is just one way for you to, what I'm going to ask is that today you don't necessarily fill it out right now. We're just going to glance through it. But I would ask that you take a little time over the next week and fill out this test, okay? And it's called Stress-Related Incidents. And basically, the way you score it is for every stress-related incident you have, you put the number of times it's happened recently. Like a lot more or a lot less trouble with your boss. So if you've been having a lot more trouble with your boss, and that's happened like 10 times in the past, and this generally means within the past couple of weeks, past month, we're not going back 10 years here. It's more of a recent kind of thing. And then for every time that happened, you take it times 23 points. So that obviously, and by the way, a lot more hassle or something with your boss can impact you just as much as a lot less can sometimes, because then that also sets us to wondering about what's going on. But some of the other ones you can just see. A major change in the number of family get-togethers, a lot more or a lot fewer. Obviously, the ones we always think of, death of a friend, death of a spouse, death of a sibling, things like that. Major change in health or behavior of a family member. Marriage, divorce, marital separation from a spouse, all of those. The spouse beginning or ceasing to work outside the home. This is interesting. I don't know how many of you have heard the stories about how a spouse retires and now they're hanging around the house all the time, and people are like, he or she is driving me crazy because, it's like, go get a job again. Or that can be a source of stress too. And obviously some things like a promotion. A promotion can be a source of stress. So the way you use this is you look through the last couple weeks, a recent kind of thing, fill out the number of times, take it times the number. Basically, if you're at 200 or above, you really need to be thinking about some strategies to handle stress. If you're above 300, definitely. You definitely are in a stressful place. Below 200 means, okay, your life is not horribly stressful right now, and yet everybody can probably always use some ideas about strategies for how to handle stress. So any questions on this stress-related incidents?
So 2 to 300, if you get that, then really stress.
2 to 300, you're probably looking at maybe trying some of the strategies. I'm going to start talking about the different strategies you use if you are in stressful kinds of a place. Definitely between 200 and 300, and most definitely over 300. Yeah. Okay. So basically, there's 3 ways to handle stress. And to take it back to the stress management sheet, 3 main approaches. Today, we're going to talk about action-oriented approaches. Next week, emotionally oriented approaches. And then the final week, acceptance-oriented. What are the differences between these? Well, basically, action-oriented means you seek to confront the problem causing the stress by changing the environment or situation. For example, using assertiveness tools to address stressful situations. An action-oriented stress strategy might be if you are having some hassles with your boss. I'm just using this as an example. For whatever reason. An action-oriented might be you develop, and we're going to walk through how you do this, develop a strategy for going and talking to the boss about the situation that's causing stress. It could be a new project that the boss just gave you, and it's causing you a huge amount of stress, and you're thinking about it, and you're waking up at night worrying about how you're going to get it done, and you're not sure you have resources or tools or ability, and so a strategy to go to your boss and talk about, could there be a change, and how do you do that? It's called assertive communications is one way, but this is really the action-oriented stress strategies are by far and away the most, the ones you have the most control over, okay? Though you do have control over all 3. But this is a way in which you really confront the source of stress and try and change it. Next week, we'll go deeper into changing your emotional perspective on the source of stress. And then the last week, we talk about if you cannot change the source of stress and you can't change your emotional feelings about it, then how do you take care of your body? How do you make sure the stress doesn't kill you? Okay? Now, before we get into the action-oriented, I gave you the stress-related incidents. There's a second thing I would recommend you doing, and this is highly recommended by people who work in this field who say this is a way to reduce the amount of stress that you might have in your life on a regular basis. Keep a stress diary. It's recommended you keep a stress diary for 2 weeks. Now, how does a stress diary work? Whether it's 3 times a day, 10 times a day, whenever you think of it. They recommend every 2 to 3 hours, but I know how we all are. We are busy, 4 hours later, oops. But at least a couple times, 3 to 5 times a day, try and check in. Write down the date and the time. And you should probably have a little notebook for this or something where instead of just on sheets of paper, something where you can track it. You write down the date and time. Then you check in. You do a little bit of emotional self-awareness and you say, where am I at right now? How am I feeling emotionally? And generally use a scale for this. A scale, the one they recommend is from -10, which means you're suicidal, to 10, which means, woohoo, life is great and everything's good and I don't feel any stress at all, okay? So if you've just had a fight with your spouse or a hassle with your boss or a car accident or something like that, you might be down at a -5 or a -7 or something like that. If you just woke up, it's a beautiful day and you realized, oh, I don't have to go to work today. And you're like, oh, I get to plan my whole day any way I want to. You might be at an 8 or 9, that kind of thing. So what you do is you do that for 2 weeks. Oh yeah, a couple more things. You rate your emotional state, and then you rate how stressed you are. So first you say, am I unhappy? Am I neutral, 0, 1, or am I really pretty good mood? You do that every time, and then you say on a scale of 0, which means not stressed at all, to 10, completely feeling stressed out right now, just totally stressed out. You list where you're at from a stress standpoint. So what you're starting to do is connect your emotional state to your level of stress. Then, to the best of your ability, write a note, just a quick note, like what might be the cause if you are stressed. If you're putting yourself at 4 or 5 or above on the 0 to 10 scale of stress, write what is the cause of your stress right now. Is it, and that's why having this chart is sometimes a good one. Like sometimes you might not be sure of what's causing your stress. So that's when you might want to just read through these again, just in case there's something that may be going on that you didn't think of, that maybe relates to one of those, and you're like, oh, that's probably what's going on, is I'm stressed about this or that. And then, do that, over the course of 2 weeks, you start to get a map, if you will, of your own emotional level and stress level over a period of time. And that starts giving you the tools you need or the suggestions you need for how to address the stress. Okay? What can I do? Because what stress do I have? What's its impact on my emotional state? And how stressed am I? And so you can start saying, for all of these, which are the ones, and today we're talking about action-oriented ones, which one of these can I maybe go and address the cause of stress? Because I see it's bothering me every day. At least every day I have one incident of being stressed out about this situation. Is there a way I can go confront the cause of stress? Now, we're talking a work situation. It might be you have a coworker. You could have a coworker who you don't always, like you have to work with on a number of different things, but you always realize that they do things a certain way that are different the way you do, and it ends up feeling very like, we're not going to get this project done together, and I'm stressed about the fact that I have to go along with the way they want to do it, and that might be a time when you need to sit down with that person and negotiate a different way of working together, something like that. And it might be, I didn't realize that every day, at least one time, I'm really stressed out about that situation. And that's why the stress diary is good. So any questions on stress-related incidents and stress diary? It means to get to know your own stress. Isn't that a fun thing? Become familiar with your own stress and what it's about.
Why do you only do it for 2 weeks?
You could do it, you can do, you can do it forever if you want to. I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm personally I'm a great believer in journaling and in being very aware of sort of where are we emotionally, how are things going, what challenges do we have, what do we want to take on. I think that's a great exercise to continue. It's just they put a recommended, just don't do it for one day, because you're looking for a pattern of over time, and you want enough different incidences, both home and at work, to have an idea what are the patterns of stress you're seeing over that period of time. If you want to do it for 3 weeks or a month, that's fine too, but you want to do it for at least 2 weeks is what they're saying. So, yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of ways to just start looking at sort of gauging. I'm going to give you a couple. First, it's just a way of looking at stress, like potentially stressful kinds of things. I think I can get up there. Maybe you want more down. And it's called a stakeholder grid. Now, this is just a way of looking at your stressful incidents and saying, how much is this impacting me, and what should I do about it? Okay, it's just an overview, if you will. And when it says first things is to identify your own potential stakeholders. And stakeholders can be boss, senior management, your coworkers, your customers, the government, trade unions, the community, special interest groups, potential customers, anyone who could be impacted by you or could be impacting your project, your work. It could be your clients here at the Resource Center. It could be, it depends on what your job is and who you're working with. Those are your stakeholders. At home, your stakeholders generally are if you have a spouse or kids or siblings or parents or neighbors or friends or, your rowing team if you're out on, rowing, whoever it might be, okay? That's the stakeholders. And the way you do this is power interest grid shown below and classify them by the power over your work. And so this is a work-oriented one, as this is, and their interest in your work. So, for example, your boss is likely to have high power and influence over your projects, as well as a high level of interest. So, for your boss, you can see high level of power, high level of interest. Manage the relationship with your boss closely, because that's going to impact your stress level because of the level of power and influence that person has on whether you could get work done effectively or not. Coworkers may have a very high level of interest, but not such a high level of power. So that would be more like keeping them informed of what you're doing. Senior management might have a very high level of power, but not a whole lot of interest. So just keep them satisfied, sort of thing. And then there's those who aren't really powerful or don't have a lot of interest, just monitor the situation. You can do this for people at home, too. You could, you know, like I think about, I'm in a situation where I'm helping to manage my mother, who's 94 right now. And I could put my siblings and siblings-in-law into this stakeholder grid, if you will, as to, you know, like manage closely, probably my mother. Siblings, maybe keep them informed. My spouse probably either keep satisfied or manage, you know, that kind of thing. You can start maybe a sibling that's out of town, not much interest, not much power, just monitor it. And so does that make sense? You can just sort of start putting people. That starts giving you the level of who do you need to manage. Because when we're talking about action-oriented stress reduction techniques, you want to work them with the people that manage closely. Those are the ones, it's your boss, it's the person who's most impacting things, is the one you're probably going to want to use if you're trying to change the source of stress. Does that make sense? Okay. This is another grid that just helps us sort of determine what are we going to do. Now, we're going to take an action-oriented strategy around stress. We're going to try and take an action about stress. How do we do that? This grid is just a very interesting grid. It seems complex, but it actually asks some really good questions about stress and the nature of stress, because we said stress many times comes from what feels like a demand that we can't meet, something that we feel like it's a threat and we don't have the resources to do it. So what they call it is unreasonable demands flowchart, because that's where we start out many times at work, is that seems like an unreasonable demand. Do unreasonable demands cause stress? Yeah, they do. It's like, how the heck am I going to do that? So you start with what seems like an unreasonable demand, and you check your understanding of the request. Check that you fully understand what is needed, why is it needed, the resources you have available, the benefits the request delivers, how the deadline was set lies behind it. And does it, after you do all of that, does it still seem unreasonable? If no, then process it. If yes, now you start looking at the request from the other person's perspective, especially if this is your boss. Good idea to do that. You look at the resources and time frame that the other person is providing. If you were that other person, with the understanding of the other person, does the demand still seem unreasonable? Does it? No. Then solve the problem or negotiate a compromise. Yes, it still seems unreasonable. Then you want to look at options that are open to you. Look at what would need to be done to solve the problem. Look at costs, consequences, implications. Brainstorm and evaluate the costs, risks, and consequences. Does it still seem unreasonable? No. Solve the problem or negotiate. Yes. Then explain your perception of the situation to the other person assertively. And does the request, after you do that and they explain their position and your position, does it still seem unreasonable? Then you agree or disagree and manage the consequences. If that's what it takes, then you solve the problem or negotiate a compromise. When we're talking about, and the reason you go through this, and I would say the most important step on this whole thing, is this box up here, the first box. Because what happens is stress causes our brain not to work as well, okay? We get asked to do something and we feel overwhelmed, we feel like I don't have the resources, this is a demand I can't meet, and we quit thinking really logically about things. So this step is really important to just say, what is needed? Why is it needed? Ask yourself these questions. Get really grounded in what's really involved with it, rather than going to the catastrophizing of where we might go with it. What resources, benefits, all of that. And then we get into more of the looking at it from the other person's perspectives. But you may notice that in this flow chart, if we take the time to really see what is the request about, what is really required, needed, all of that, many times that's going to solve that unreasonable. It's like, no, I guess it isn't so unreasonable after all. And you notice then it just says process the request. When we get down to the next box, if it still seems unreasonable, it says, now look at it from the perspective of the other person. Like, why might they be asking for this request? What might their resources be, or all of that? And notice it says if it still seems unreasonable, now we've added the negotiate. Because now you're getting into the situation, which is what we're going to be talking about here, is you want to find a way that works for both parties. You negotiate a solution. What you don't want to do is if you have some control over some form or source of stress, is just to give in. Because most of the stress we have in life, we can't change. We cannot change the source of stress, we can't change the overall situation. So when we can change it, we definitely want to take it. And by the way, the more we practice assertiveness in the face of stressful situations, talking about the source of stress, figuring out ways to handle it in different ways, the more we do that, the better we get at it. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about assertiveness. Because that's the real skill you're going to be using in this situation is assertiveness, okay? Now, assertiveness is a very specific skill. Very specific skill, and I'm going to put up here on the board what I call my assertiveness continuum. Assertiveness looks like this. I know I got to keep it open for that. Over here, we have passive. We're going through life, and we don't believe our wants and needs are valid. Whether it's in a specific situation or whether it's more in a universal sense, we believe our wants and needs are not something we should speak up for, and we are passive about it. Many of us haven't even really practiced knowing what our wants and needs are, okay? We just don't even think about what our wants and needs are. In this theory of action-oriented strategies, assertiveness, and I would say assertiveness is a skill you should practice all the time in every way. It's a good skill. So passive means not asking for what we want or need, or not thinking our wants and needs are worthy. At the other end of the scale, we have aggressive. This is where we think our wants and needs are the only ones we should be concerned about. Okay? That we're going to ask for whatever we want, whatever we need, with absolutely no regard to anyone else's wants and needs. In the middle, between these two, is what's known as assertive. So what happens here? Maybe some of you have been through this situation before. We're passive, right? That's where most humans generally spend a lot of their time, is thinking, my wants and needs are not important enough for me to speak up. So you don't say anything, and you're quiet. And then at some point down the road, you realize my needs and wants aren't being met at all. I'm feeling run over by a steamroller here. And what do? We go from here, boom, over to here. And next thing we know, we're pounding the boss's desk and saying, why did it, or whatever it might be. Learning how to ask for our own wants and needs, ask for what we want, we need, while taking into consideration the wants and needs of others. That's what assertiveness is, plain and simple. But notice there's two parts to assertiveness. Owning our own wants and needs, knowing what they are, while also honoring the wants and needs of other people. And that's what true assertiveness is. And assertiveness is the skill, it's an emotional intelligence skill. It's the skill that you want to use for these action-oriented stress relief strategies. Now, the way that in terms of getting better at assertiveness, I highly recommend this. This is a very simple, it's called ladder. Very simple method for learning how to get better at being assertive in many different kinds of situations, including those where you might be confronting a source of stress. Ladder communications look like this. L, look at your rights and what you want, right? Our wants and needs. And understand your feelings about the situation. A, arrange a meeting with the other person to discuss the situation. Now, what did I say? We lay out the stakeholder grid. Usually it's somebody up in this corner here who has control over things and power over things and influence. If we have a source of stress in a project, on our job, in a, something we're working on, that's who we probably are going to need to be able to sit down with and talk through this. So arrange a meeting with them. Do not do this as a pass them in the hallway and say, hey, you got a minute? No, don't do it that way. Say, let's sit down, let's talk about this. D, define the problem specifically. And it might be, I don't feel that I have the technical training in order to take, this part of the project and do it effectively, and yet I'm feeling like that's a requirement, and I'm really starting to panic because I think I'm not going to be able to get this done. Could be something along those lines. Define the problem. You don't want to go on and on and on. If you're talking about somebody who's talking to somebody more powerful than yourself, you want to make sure you practice this first, so you're succinct and to the point. The second D, describe your feelings so the other person fully understands how you feel. You might say, I'm feeling very frustrated right now because I know I could get this done, but I don't have the tools, whatever it might be. E, express what you want clearly and concisely. Could I have so-and-so, the technical persons, could I have an hour with them within the next week? Can we schedule that, or 2 hours? Can you ask his or her boss to let me borrow them and help me through this? Whatever it might be. You have an ask. And then R, the last one, which I think is the most important one of all. We can all practice asking for our wants and needs, getting better at that, but considering the other person's wants or needs are part of this whole formula, and the last piece is the one where you really, and this is sort of how you seal the deal. If you're going to be confronting sources of stress, you want to change the stress. And just saying, wah, I got stress, is not necessarily going to move anybody to say, oh, we'll change everything for you. No, you have to make it worth their while. And you do it by reinforcing the other person by explaining the mutual benefits of adopting the action you are suggesting. So, what I want you to do, we only have about 7-8 minutes left, I want you to just take a minute or two and think about a situation where you maybe could talk to somebody, and I hate to use the word confront because that's sort of scary. I'm saying more along the lines of if there's a situation in your work life where, you know what, sitting down and talking to somebody about something, some aspect of my job could reduce my stress quite significantly. Just want you to take a couple notes about that. But where I really want you to work is on the R. And I'm going to give you a phrase for dealing with that last one, the reinforce their feelings and because that's their wants and needs. Mutual benefits. Another way to look at it is called WIIFM. In this case, it's T, not M, but WIIFM sounds better than. But anyway, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? This is the R, is knowing that whoever you are talking to, if you're trying to confront a source of stress, change something, or just speak up for your own wants and needs, always think remember, that's what they're thinking in their mind. They are listening to what you have to say, and whether consciously or unconsciously, they are thinking, what's in it for me? What's the reasoning why I should care enough about this person's problem to do whatever they're asking me to do? So what I'd like you to do is, for whatever the scenario you might have thought of when I said just somebody you could talk to about a stressful kind of thing and maybe try and change it, play with what would be this statement, the what's in it for them statement you would need to make in that situation in order to convince them that whatever you're asking for is worth giving. Okay? Does that make sense, what I'm asking? Yeah, just play with that concept for a minute and see what you come up with. funny thing about this process, I'm asking you just to think about this for a minute. I would recommend, if you are going to try and take an action-oriented strategy and to talk to somebody about a source of stress, do not do it without actually writing down what you will say in each one of these. The more concise, succinct, and ready you are for this conversation by either writing it down or rehearsing it a number of times, the more powerful you're going to come off sounding. And the more powerful you come off sounding, can anybody out there think about why would you want to sound powerful? Having looked at how we get through our unreasonable demands chart, why does sounding powerful, why is that a good thing?
More believable.
You're more believable? Yep. Are you in a better place to negotiate if you're sounding powerful? And what we're talking about here is that when you are experiencing stress due to something that is change, something you can change by requesting the change, the more you go into it sounding credible, believable, and powerful, the better the chances you're going to be able to negotiate a solution that will relieve you of that cause of stress or change the situation. So that's why you want to practice this. I can give you an example I'm going through right now, where I have a project that's due, that I've been working on for weeks, and thought I was done, only to find out that the grant holder said, no, you're not done. Can I go to the grant holder and say, yes, I am? No, that would be an example of me needing to do either an emotional or an acceptance form but I do have partners in this grant. And I've asked the partners for help, and none of them have really come forward to help me with this project. So I'm feeling very stressed about it. Now what I need to do is I need to pick one or two of those partners, and I need to do a statement to them of why it would benefit them. And as it's two heads of county departments, I better make it something that makes sense to them. So my what's in it for them statement would probably be something along the lines of, if you could assign somebody to help me finish this project, because I don't have the technical expertise to finish it, if we do a good job, we have a better chance of getting more money for the next round of this project, because we're going to look better, we will have represented what we did better, and we'll get more money in the long run. And thus, when the next thing gets funded, there'll be more percentage, be higher, you get 10%, that 10% is going to be a lot higher for you. You'll have a stronger revenue stream coming in as a result of this grant, if you help me now. So, what did you hear there? That what I just said, that would be my what's in it for them. What did I do? I'm preparing to negotiate. How did I make it worth their while?
More money.
More money. I will say, if you can make it, if you're going to talk to a boss, an action-oriented strategy to reduce some stress, and you feel like you can do that, put it in dollars and cents, or productivity, or effectiveness, or hours saved, or whatever. That kind of language that somebody in a position of power is going to want to hear. The more you can put it in that language, the more you'll be listened to. Even though your want and need isn't associated with hours, effectiveness, all that, if you can figure out a way to translate it to that and ask for something different, assertively, that gets them interested, you have a better chance of winning your negotiation with them. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're almost at 10 of. Your assignments, if you're all going to come back, which I hope you are, even if you're not, go through the stress-related incidents. It's just a good thing to look through and start learning the real causes of all our different kinds of stress. Run your stress diary. That really will give you some insight into your emotional reaction to stress, and also some better insight into what are your causes of stress in life. And then next week, we will start talking about, so maybe you can't assertively go and confront the source of stress. How do you emotionally change your perception of the stress or what it's doing to you? And it's called emotionally oriented strategies. So that's what we're going to do next week. We probably next week, if we have new people, we'll do a little bit of the overview. So we'll be a little bit of review for the first 5-8 minutes. And then we'll be getting into this second kind of how do I manage stress in my life. Thank you all for your attention today, and I hopefully will see you all next week.